the nervous system can be divided into multiple different divisions. So at the kind of the structural level, you have the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is made up of the brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system is located, or it's made up of everything else outside of the brain and spinal cord. Now, within the peripheral nervous system, there are two divisions. There's a sensory division that sends information to the central nervous system, and then a motor division that responds to stimulus from the central nervous system. So sensory division would be like sensory receptors being stimulated, and then that information getting sent to the brain where it can be perceived. The motor division would be something like the central nervous system sending a signal to, for example, skeletal muscles in order to make them contract. Within the motor division, we can also break it down into a somatic division and an autonomic division. So the somatic division controls the voluntary control of skeletal muscle. The autonomic division is automatic, and it's involuntarily controlling cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands. And then the autonomic division can further be broken down into the sympathetic division and the parasympathetic division. And we'll talk about each of these in more detail on the following slides. So first of all, this slide here is just showing you the information here, but organized in a different way. So once again, nervous system is made up of the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is made up of the brain and spinal cords. The peripheral nervous system is made up of motor nerves and sensory nerves. The sensory division sends information to the brain. The motor division receives information from the brain, and then it either triggers the somatic division, which allows for the voluntary control of skeletal muscle, or it stimulates the autonomic division, which involuntarily stimulates cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands such as endocrine glands and sweat glands and stuff like that. And then the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions are kind of opposites of each other. So the sympathetic division is also known as the fight or flight division, whereas the parasympathetic is known as the rest and digest. So they have opposite effects on each other. In the peripheral nervous system, groups of cell bodies are called a ganglion. So you can kind of see this little area here. And in diagrams like this, they draw the neuron kind of in a simplistic way to make it a little bit easier to draw it in there. So typically this little circle here would be the cell body, and then this would be the axon, and then this would be the synapse or the axon terminals at the end. So a ganglion is just where the cell bodies are grouped together. So this is where the synapses are happening. In the central nervous system, a group of cell bodies was called a nucleus. And then the nerve is just where the axons of multiple neurons are bundled together. And it was called a tract in the central nervous system. Now, if we take a look at the structure of a nerve, it's packaged in a way that is very similar to how a skeletal muscle is packaged. So if you recall from the skeletal muscle section, we talked about the endomysium, perimysium, and epimysium. And each of these layers are just connective tissue, like sheets of connective tissue that are surrounding different structures. So in a muscle, the endomysium surrounded each individual skeletal muscle fiber or cell. In nerves, the endoneurium surrounds each individual axon. So we can look here. So these would be little nerve fibers here, and there would be a little endoneurium around the the axons themselves. Now, just like in muscles, the perimysium surrounded a group of skeletal muscle cells called fascicles. Well, in the nerve, we also have fascicles, but it's a group of axons, and it's surrounded by a layer of connective tissue called the perineurium. All right, and then the entire nerve also has a layer of connective tissue called the epineurium. So you've got the endoneurium around the axon, perineurium around a fascicle or a group of axons, and then the epineurium around the entire nerve.